Married to the Billionaire Who Ruined My Life Part 3. Chapter 14, The Betrayal of Blood. Julian Blackwood was exactly as dangerous as Lena imagined. Because he didn't look dangerous at all. She found him the next day in an unlikely place, sipping espresso in broad daylight on the terrace of the Aurora Hotel, as if he hadn't orchestrated the destruction of her entire life 5 years earlier. He looked almost boyish, dressed in a sand-colored suit, sunglasses perched lazily on his nose, that same self-satisfied smirk curled into his lips like a permanent scar. "You've grown colder," he said, glancing up when she approached. "I like it. You wear rage like silk now." Lena sat across from him. She didn't smile. Didn't blink. "Why did you do it?" Julian set his cup down slowly. "Straight to it, then. Damien always did like that about you." She stared. "You destroyed me." His head tilted. "That's such a dramatic word, Lena. You disappeared. I simply helped the story along." The waiter brought a fresh pot of coffee. Julian waved him off and leaned in. "You know what's funny," he said. "You think you were the target. But you weren't. Not really. You were the collateral damage. The beautiful, inconvenient casualty." Her jaw tightened. "Then who was the real target?" "You're sleeping next to him." The words dropped like ice cubes into boiling water. Julian took off his sunglasses, and his eyes were the same pale blue as Damien's, but colder. Lighter. Less human. "He thought he could have everything," Julian continued. "The company, the fortune, the legacy, and you. The woman he kept hidden from the world like a secret prize. I knew he'd protect you. But I also knew he'd never protect you publicly. Not until it was too late." He poured himself more coffee. Took a sip. Then leaned in and said it. "Did he ever tell you he paid you off?" Lena froze. "What? After the scandal? After you vanished?" He buried the story fast. "Paid the tabloids to retract, bought silence from anyone who would have pointed a finger. Oh, and then he made a very large payment to a very private offshore account. One that, interestingly enough, had your name on it." Lena's heart slammed into her ribs. "You're lying." "Am I?" Julian smiled. "Ask him." "I have." "Ask again." She shook her head. "He thought I was dead." "Did he?" Julian raised an eyebrow. "Or did he just want to look like he believed that? Let's be honest, Lena. You didn't just vanish. You were erased. And no one can erase something so completely, without help." Her mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Now." He leaned back in his chair and gave her that smile again, that perfectly rehearsed, lizard-smooth smile. "Because I want you to ask yourself a question. If Damien really loved you, why did he let the world believe the worst about you for 5 years? And why did he pay to keep it buried?" Her voice came out hollow. "You just want me to turn on him." Julian laughed softly. "Lena, you're already turning." She stood. She didn't trust herself to say another word. Her head spun, her stomach twisted. As she walked away, she could feel his gaze on her. Julian Blackwood didn't need to follow her to hurt her. He had already planted the seed. And it was already growing. She returned to the estate in silence, driving past the iron gates without seeing them. Her mind was back in the past. Back in the moments that now didn't feel like memories, but setups. The sudden disappearance of the photos from the tabloids. The investors who had dropped her, then reappeared under Damien's umbrella months later. The expensive PR cleanup she never could explain. And that last whisper. A payment made in your name. She walked into the house like a shadow. And there he was, Damien, waiting in the hallway, his brow furrowed in concern. You saw him, he said. She nodded. And? Her voice barely made it out. Did you pay them? His eyes didn't move. Lena. Did you pay them? He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it. He just whispered, it wasn't what you think. And for the second time in 2 days. Lena's world fractured again. Chapter 15, The Hidden Camera. It had started with a filing cabinet. Damien had left the house that morning without a word, the tension between them raw and unfinished. Lena hadn't asked where he was going. She didn't trust herself to speak, not after the night before, not after the silence that followed her question. Did you pay them? He hadn't denied it. And that hurt more than a confession. She wandered the house like a ghost, trapped in a place that once felt like a battleground and now felt like a betrayal she had invited in. By mid-afternoon, the ache in her chest had hardened into a blade. If Damien wouldn't give her the whole truth, she'd find it herself. She wasn't the same girl who ran from a scandal 5 years ago. She would dig this time. She would drag the truth into the light. She began in his office. Not the one on the 72nd floor of Blackwood Tower, but the smaller, private one here, at the estate. A place she'd rarely entered. A place too clean, too organized, too quiet. The desk was locked, but that didn't stop her. She had watched him unlock it a dozen times. She knew the pattern of his fingers by memory. Inside, rows of files. Some labeled, others not. It took over an hour before she found the unlabeled black binder tucked behind a series of quarterly reports. It was filled with nothing but receipts. Not financial ones, electronic records. Backups. Storage logs. External hard drive tracking from security systems. The folder belonged to the Langford Hotel. The night of the gala. The night everything fell apart. She froze. Inside the binder was a USB, sleek and black. No label. No clue. She hesitated only a second before taking it, shutting the drawer, and fleeing to the library where she could plug it into Damien's personal laptop. She inserted the drive. A folder popped up. Video archive, Langford Ballroom, the 11th of February back service entrance. Her stomach dropped. There were timestamps. She clicked. The footage was grainy but functional. A security feed from a side corridor just outside the ballroom. The service hallway that guests never used. The timestamp read 10:04 p.m. There. On screen. Her. Lena, young, radiant in white, laughing with a champagne glass in her hand. She remembered this moment. She had slipped out for air. Just 5 minutes. Then. Someone else entered the frame. A tall man. Dark coat. Slouchy posture. Confident. Julian. Her heart stopped. He walked into frame, looked directly into the camera, and then reached into his coat and pulled something out. A flash drive. Lena watched, frozen, as he moved toward a maintenance panel, opened it, and plugged the device into the hotel's AV input. Seconds later, he stepped back, adjusted his jacket, and smiled. A wide, smug, practiced smile. Then he left. 10:07 p.m. The feed cut. She rewound the footage. Watched again. And again. The exact minute the scandal footage had appeared online. The exact minute the leaked hotel suite video had gone viral. And Damien. He never appeared once. Lena sat back, shaking. The truth hit her like a tidal wave. It was Julian. It had always been Julian. He had inserted the doctored footage into the hotel's AV system. He had ensured the servers were breached. He had used the venue's own infrastructure to destroy her in real time. It hadn't been an accident. It hadn't even been subtle. It was theatrical. Designed to humiliate. She covered her mouth, bile rising in her throat. She had hated Damien. She had married him to destroy him. But the man who deserved her hatred was someone she hadn't even seen coming. She didn't cry. Not this time. She ejected the USB, walked calmly to her room, and placed it in her purse like a weapon. Julian had wanted her erased. Instead, she was coming back with proof. But there was one more thing she had to do first. She found Damien in the greenhouse behind the estate, an unexpected place, filled with orchids and silence. He didn't look up when she walked in. He was staring at a white peony in bloom. "My mother grew these," he said softly, not turning. "They were the only soft thing in our house." Lena stepped closer. "I know you didn't do it." He looked at her then. His face, tired, guarded, twitched. "I saw the footage," she said. "At the Langford. The hallway outside the ballroom." His shoulders dropped. She pulled the USB from her purse and placed it on the wooden table beside him. Julian was there. He planted it all. "You weren't even in the building." Damien didn't speak. Not for a long moment. Then. "I knew," he whispered. "I suspected. But I could never prove it." Lena looked at him. And for the first time in 5 years, she saw not just the man who had survived her loss, but the man who had been bleeding quietly ever since. Chapter 16, The Real Enemy. Julian Blackwood was already waiting for her. He was always one step ahead. It wasn't just arrogance, it was ritual. The anticipation of the confrontation, the hunger to watch his enemy arrive knowing they had finally figured it out. But not soon enough. Lena found him at the Blue Swan Club, one of those velvet-drenched, members-only lounges where the elite came to drink behind closed curtains and break rules that never applied to them. She hadn't dressed for subtlety. She wore black, sleek, sharp, and cold as glass. Her heels announced her presence as she walked across the marble floor and stopped at the edge of the candlelit table where Julian sat sipping dark liquor, a smirk already in place. "Lena," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "How delightful. Cut the performance." His smile widened. "Ah. So you've finally watched the tape." She didn't flinch. "You were in the hallway. You planted the video. You destroyed me." "I know," he said. "Wasn't it glorious?" The casual way he said it made her stomach twist. This wasn't a man caught in the act. This was a man proud of it. "You ruined an innocent woman's life," she said, fists clenched at her sides. "You slandered me. Exiled me. You made me think Damien betrayed me." "Yes." He leaned forward. "That was my favorite part." Her voice dropped. Why? He tilted his head like it was obvious. Because he had everything. The company. The empire. The name. The father's approval. But it wasn't enough. He had to have you too. And you were supposed to be the one thing I could ruin without consequence. You wanted to hurt him, so you destroyed me. I wanted to remind him, Julian said, swirling his drink, that even kings can bleed. She stared at him in disbelief. And all this time, you let me think it was him. Of course, he said, eyes glittering. You were easier to manipulate than he was. Easier to twist. And you made the perfect weapon. You came back wrapped in revenge and walked right into his house. I didn't even have to lift a finger. You're sick. I'm patient. He stood slowly, walking toward her with predatory grace. I watched him build a world where you were dead and he couldn't breathe. I watched him drown in guilt. And now, just when he's starting to feel whole again, he leaned in, voice low and gleeful. I'm going to take you from him. Again. Lena's blood turned to fire. You won't get the chance. Oh, I already have. He smiled, stepping back. I'm just waiting for the next act. And you, my dear, are already on stage. He dropped a black envelope onto the table. It bore the Blackwood family crest. What is that? She asked. Julian's smile turned cruel. Insurance. A little truth bomb. Let's see how much he loves you after this drops in tomorrow's headlines. You're bluffing. He winked. I never bluff. I orchestrate. And then he was gone, vanished into the red velvet shadows like a ghost who knew he had already left the wound behind. Lena didn't move. The envelope sat on the table like a grenade. She picked it up. Inside were photos. Grainy. Intimate. Doctored, but expertly. Photos of her and Damien at the estate. At the gala. In the garden. The timestamps were manipulated. The narrative had already been written. Blackwood's widow bride, secret mistress or corporate mole. The headline burned into her brain. Julian wasn't just out for vengeance. He was out for annihilation. And he wasn't finished. That night, she returned home to Damien. She didn't say what she'd seen. Not yet. But when he touched her shoulder, she didn't pull away. Because for the first time, she knew exactly what they were up against. And the only way to survive now was together. Chapter 17, The Stolen Baby. There was a knock at the door. It was just after 9 a.m., and the Blackwood estate was still cloaked in the quiet hush of morning fog. Lena was in the sunroom, barefoot, coffee cooling in her hand, when she heard it, not the usual polite ring from the front gates, but the urgent thud of someone who refused to wait. By the time she reached the entry hall, Damien was already there. He stood at the door in a black robe, jaw tight, tension radiating from every inch of his frame. Whatever peace had settled between them over the past few days had shattered with a single knock. Lena didn't have to guess who it was. She already knew. He opened the door. And there stood Vanessa. But she wasn't alone. She held a child. A boy, no older than 4. Pale hair. Big grey eyes. Dressed in a too-neat suit that didn't quite hide how thin he was. Vanessa, of course, looked immaculate, no trace of exhaustion or guilt. Just the kind of smug composure that came from knowing she had delivered a nuclear bomb and could still walk away in heels. Lena stepped beside Damien, her heart a tight coil. What the hell is this? Damien asked, voice low, controlled. Vanessa smiled sweetly. Meet Nicholas. Your son. The air was vacuumed out of the room. Lena's stomach dropped. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Damien took one slow step forward, eyes locked on the boy. You're lying, he said. Am I? Vanessa cocked her head. Let's see, 5 years ago, the night of the scandal. You weren't with your precious Elena. You were with me. Briefly. Sloppy. Regretful, sure, but memorable. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. Damien turned to her immediately. It's not true. But Vanessa just hummed. I disappeared, remember, she said. Vanished from the scene right after everything went down. Moved to Monaco. Had a baby. Never said a word. Because I didn't need to, until now. Damien looked at the child again. The resemblance was haunting. But not definitive. Why now? He asked. Vanessa's eyes glittered. Because your name is in headlines again. And now your wife is back from the dead. And the thing is, she leaned in, dropping her voice to a purr. Julian made me a better offer than silence. Lena stepped forward. Julian knows about this. Vanessa gave her a mock-pitying look. Julian paid for this. Damien's voice cut like glass. Then what do you want? Public acknowledgement. A trust fund. His last name. DNA test, of course, let's be civil. She smiled, sickly sweet. Unless you'd prefer a tabloid war. Get out, Damien growled. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You sure? It's a little late to protect your image now. But fine. I'll wait for the lab results. She placed a white envelope on the entry table, testing forms, already filled out. Slick. Calculated. Ready to burn. Then she took the boy's hand. Say goodbye, Nicholas. The child stared at Damien for a long moment. Then turned and followed Vanessa down the steps. The silence that followed was unbearable. Later that day, the test was done. Lena stood outside the Blackwood clinic, arms crossed, mind spinning. She hadn't spoken to Damien on the drive over. Couldn't. Because this wasn't just about Vanessa. It was about timing. About betrayal. About everything she almost forgave. And now. Now there was a child. A maybe son. A walking, breathing consequence. Inside the private clinic, Damien sat beside her, silent as stone while the technician drew blood. When it was Lena's turn to leave a sample, just to rule out Julian as the father too, she didn't protest. Because in the deepest part of her mind, something darker was whispering. What if this wasn't Damien's mistake? What if it was Julian's game, again? And what if Vanessa's child didn't belong to either of them? Back at the estate, Lena sat by the fire, holding the envelope Vanessa left behind. She hadn't opened it. Couldn't bring herself to. Damien poured himself a drink and didn't offer her one. He hadn't spoken since they got back. Finally, she said, "Did you sleep with her?" "Yes," he said, and there was no hesitation. Her chest caved. "It was one time. After you disappeared. When I thought you were gone. And she was there. I was angry. Drunk. Hollow." Lena didn't speak. He didn't beg. But she could feel the shame rolling off him in waves. The fire crackled. The room felt too large. Then Damien looked up at her, eyes haunted. I don't know if the child is mine. But if he is, I won't turn my back on him. Lena nodded once, numb. The storm hadn't passed. It had only just begun. Chapter 18, The Crash, Again. The city shimmered in the rearview mirror, a skyline of glass daggers piercing the sky, retreating as Lena sped down the highway, breath sharp and hands locked on the wheel. She didn't know where she was going. She just had to go. The paternity test results were due in 12 hours, but it wasn't the child that had her fleeing. It was the truth. The weight of everything, the scandal, Julian's games, Vanessa's reappearance, and Damien's confession, one time, hollow, angry, pressed against her chest like a vice. She had forgiven so much. But trust. That was harder to give back. Her phone vibrated again. She didn't look. Damien had already called 3 times. She pressed harder on the gas. The wind whipped through the narrow opening in her window. The road blurred. Her thoughts spiraled. And that's when the black SUV appeared behind her. Too close. Too fast. Her eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Tinted windows. No license plate. It didn't slow. It didn't pass. It just followed. Lena's heart slammed. Another car merged behind her, white, sleek, keeping pace. This wasn't traffic. This was a trap. She gripped the wheel, her body taut with adrenaline. Her phone buzzed again, this time vibrating across the console. She answered, hands trembling. Lena. Damien's voice crackled through. Where are you? I'm being followed, she breathed. What? 2 cars. Behind me. They're not trying to pass. Where are you? Turnpike. Mile 43. I'm on my way. Keep driving. Don't stop. Do not pull over. But it was too late. The black SUV veered into the next lane, cutting her off. Lena jerked the wheel, tires screeching as she swerved, heart pounding in her throat. She slammed her foot on the brake, but the white car behind her accelerated, nudging closer. Damien, she gasped. I'm coming. Just hang on. The black SUV suddenly turned sharply and clipped the front of her car. Everything exploded. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Lena's car spun once, twice, then flipped over the guardrail, tumbling into a ditch. Upside down. Darkness. Silence. Smoke. Pain. She tasted blood. Airbags had deployed, but the car had crumpled around her like paper. Her arms were pinned. Her head throbbed. The world tilted sideways. She didn't know if she was alive. Until she heard it. His voice. Lena. Footsteps. Rushing. Metal groaning. Her door wrenched open, daylight blinding her. And then he was there. Damien. Crawling into the wreckage. Blood on his forehead. Dirt on his knees. Pure terror in his eyes. Don't move, he said, voice shaking. Damien, she whispered. I know. His hands were already undoing the seat belt, brushing glass from her face, checking her pulse like he couldn't believe she was real. You're okay, he kept repeating. You're okay, you're okay. I thought I was going to die, she murmured, a tear slipping down her cheek. He choked back a sound and pulled her close. Held her. Buried his face in her neck. You can't leave me again, he said, voice breaking. Not like that. Not like before. She clung to him as the sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. It was exactly like the night she'd disappeared all those years ago. A car. A crash. A world turned upside down. But this time, he had come for her. This time, he hadn't vanished. This time, she hadn't been alone. Later, in the hospital, she lay in a white bed under warm lights, bruised but intact. Damien sat beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then she whispered, "You saved me again." He squeezed her hand gently. "I won't fail you twice." Tears welled behind her eyes. She had spent 5 years chasing the past. But the truth was sitting beside her, broken and breathing and bleeding for her. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop running. Chapter 19, The DNA Switch. 3 days after the crash, Lena was home. Not fully healed, not quite steady, but alive. And different. Something in her had shifted. When Damien carried her out of the wreckage, something inside her cracked wide open. The anger, the suspicion, the walls she'd built with steel and fire, they were still there, but thinner now. Fragile. Almost ready to fall. But peace wasn't part of their story. Not yet. Because the paternity results were in. And they were about to tear everything apart again. The email came just after midnight. Lena was alone in the estate's library, a fire flickering behind her, Damien asleep upstairs for the first time in days. She had her laptop open, the paternity report from Blackwood Clinic loading behind a secure firewall. She held her breath as the PDF appeared. Paternity confirmation, 99.9% match. Subject A, Damien Blackwood, is the biological father of Subject C, Nicholas Lane. Lena stared at it. The letters blurred. No. No, this wasn't right. Damien had been adamant. That night with Vanessa, it was short, drunk, a mistake born of grief. He hadn't denied it, but he hadn't believed the timing made sense. And more than that, Vanessa had looked too smug. Too prepared. Lena closed the file and reopened the secure lab email. Something about the metadata was off. She wasn't a tech expert, but she knew enough. Her time off the grid had taught her how to read file history. She checked the document's properties. Last modified, 6 hours ago. By Julian Blackwood. Her blood turned to ice. Julian had accessed the report. Which meant, he had tampered with it. Lena didn't hesitate. She pulled the USB from her bag, the one Damien had given her after the crash, containing copies of all the raw DNA data, untouched by the clinic. He hadn't known what to do with it. He trusted the lab. But she didn't. Not anymore. She drove through the night to Thorn Genetics, a private facility known for discretion, and a lab technician she knew from her former life, one who owed her a favor. She handed him the files. "Tear it apart," she said. "And don't tell anyone I was here." 2 days later, the results came in a sealed envelope. Lena sat in her car, parked on the cliffs outside the city, wind screaming around her. She opened the envelope. Subject A, Damien Blackwood, 0% match. Not the biological father of Subject C. Secondary profile flagged for potential match, Subject B, Julian Blackwood, 99.7%. Lena's hands shook. She read the report twice. Then a third time. The truth hit her like a thunderclap. The child wasn't Damien's. It was Julian's. And Julian had tampered with the results to frame his brother. Again. But why? To destroy Damien's credibility. To drive Lena away from him. To tie Vanessa to the Blackwoods with legal leverage. Or worse, because Julian had never stopped pulling strings, and this child was just another weapon. She returned to the estate with the envelope tucked in her coat and fury burning in her chest. Damien was in the garden, standing beneath the bare-limbed magnolias, his expression tense. He looked up the moment she arrived, sensing the storm behind her eyes. "Well?" he asked. She didn't answer. She walked straight to him and placed the real envelope in his hands. He opened it. "Read the first line." His shoulders slumped in something like grief and relief. "It's not mine," he said quietly. "No," Lena said. "But your brother tried to make sure you believed it was." Damien's face twisted. Not in anger, but in understanding. "He's not done," he whispered. "He won't stop until he's erased everything." "He already tried once," Lena said. "Now he's trying again. With lies. With a child." Damien looked at her. "You still believe me?" "I believe in truth," she said, her voice steady. "And this time, it's on our side." But even as they stood in the cold wind, stronger together, they both knew. Julian wasn't finished. He had already framed Damien once. He had buried Lena in lies. And now, he'd planted a child like a ticking bomb in their lives. But now they had the one thing they hadn't before. Proof. And proof was power. Because every broken heart deserves a comeback. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of betrayal, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself, share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming unforgettable.